Hi, and welcome to Be Your Own Best Coach Conversations, where you can learn to shift your mindset, change your behavior, and do more stuff you care about. I'm Glen Lubbert, one of the co-founders of Be Your Own Best Coach, a 5-week group coaching program. In this special episode, I share an excerpt from one of our Be Your Own Best Coach guest contributors, part of a series of guest interviews within the program. Let's take a listen. Our distinguished guest today is Melissa Daimler. She has been an executive at high-growth companies for over 20 years. She is now principal of Daimler Partners, working as an advisor, facilitator, and executive coach. Her primary focus is helping leaders define and operationalize culture. Prior to starting Daimler Partners, Melissa was an executive who experienced multiple leadership viewpoints throughout her career. She led HR for a fast-growing venture-funded startup. She created and built learning and development functions for Adobe, Twitter, and WeWork. She built a coaching company while also the first employee of Coach University and one of the first leaders in the coaching field. Her experience as an executive and now as a consultant includes coaching executives, helping teams work more effectively, and building scale-proof organizational processes and practices. Welcome, Melissa, and thank you for speaking with us today.
It's great to be here, Glenn. I'm excited to talk with you.
So today we want to talk about designing how we work during this pandemic and into the future. There are lots of changes with how we work and how we interact with each other. So I want to know what suggestions you have for navigating the current climate here in late 2020 and into the future of how we will work.
Sure. I think 2020 has been a great time to pause and take a step back in thinking about how we work. I think when we first were looking at this crisis, how long has it been? 8 months ago, we were in survival mode. I think a lot of companies were trying to figure out how much money we have left. Do we need to lay people off? If so, what does that look like structurally? How long is this even going to last? So are we going to be able to last? And then you moved into the second phase, which was, okay, we know a little bit more information now. We're stable. We have identified the team that's going to carry us through this next year. Now, how are we going to have to pivot with our business? And then this third phase is, I don't think we're going to get back to any kind of normal. You know, we kept saying, even in the second phase, like, okay, we're going to get back, maybe fall, maybe spring of 2021, we're going to get back. Now we realize that how we worked is never going to be how we work again. Yeah. And so I think we're trying to now reconfigure how we work remotely and identify the processes and practices and really the playbook for how to do that. And a big thing that I'm noticing is similar to something that I think we did even in the learning field years ago, where we tried to take in-person trainings and just put them into video and think that was so cool. That was called blended learning or that, virtual learning. And it wasn't, of course. It was just learning through a computer that was a lot of times really boring because you didn't have the same interaction as you did in person. And I think we've been trying to do that in working as well. So everything we did at work, the back-to-back meetings, the way we communicate, the way we collaborate, we just are trying to do that all online now without thinking differently about how might we reconfigure that. And so I think now people are realizing that, wow, why are we so burned out after 15 Zoom calls?
Yeah,
Zoom fatigue is real. And so, maybe we don't have all video calls. Maybe we think about having some phone calls. You and I have had phone calls.
Yeah, I said, can we just do a phone call? Yeah, that works too. It allowed me to get up and walk around, and it was just a different dynamic. And it was really refreshing to do. I'm like, oh yeah, the phone.
Yeah. And so I think, and I know you talk a lot about things like deep work and managing yourself and your days. And I think leaders are starting to figure out that they need to be doing that with their teams as well. So just taking a pause and identifying different ways that we can work together in this remote environment is a lot of what a lot of companies are working on now.
And as we go into, as we look and say, oh, yeah, at the beginning it was like, oh, maybe this is going to be, we can get this back into normal in the fall. And now, it's at least a whole nother year, if not more. And people's behaviors have changed now too, and their expectations of what they want to do with going into the office has changed too. And so I'm curious what you think around how that will shape it will be a balance between this home and office work environments.
I think we're finally realizing there will be. I always hated that term balance because you never were fully balanced. I like the term integration. You're always integrating different roles, whether it's, your role at work, your role at home as a partner, as a parent, as an aunt, being an athlete. All of those pieces come together in an integrated way. And I think we're realizing that at work too. It can't all be, these are people who are just going to be in the office, and these are people who, this is the other half that's going to work remotely. I think people want this integrated approach to work too. They want to feel like they have an opportunity to integrate their practices and the way they work into kind of this new idea, this new way of working. So maybe I want to work 2 days at home and I want to come into the office for 3 days. Or maybe it's 3 days at home or 4 days at home and 1 day in the office, or maybe it's 1 week in the office. So I think a lot of companies are just talking with their employees right now, sending out surveys, trying to figure out even, do you want to stay in, we're in Silicon Valley. Do you want to stay in San Francisco or close to headquarters, or do you want to move? And then if you do stay close to the current headquarters, how many people do want to come in, and what does that look like? So I think, what's happening is what should have been happening anyway at work around culture. I define culture as, how we work, the behaviors, processes, and practices of all the things that we do every day. And, things like, being more intentional around how we make decisions, and being intentional around when and how we collaborate. Maybe it's okay to collaborate on Zoom, or even, a lot of companies like GitLab and Basecamp, who've been remote from their start. You can learn a lot from them. I mean, they're doing a lot of asynchronous work through Google Documents or through Slack, or, how are they working together? How are they collaborating? But I think being more intentional in the kind of conversations we're having, the meetings we're having, what's supposed to be the outcome of this meeting, who should be in this meeting, and then again, is this meeting more effective if we come together live, or can we just do it virtually? So I think there's this intention that's starting to emerge in how we work that, again, I feel like should have been there all the time, but we kind of were just being on automatic in our offices, just kind of running from one meeting to another.
Yeah, there's this conversation around that this pandemic isn't changing things, it's really just accelerating things that were already on the move there. And so, I think that what I'm hearing from you is that in culture, that is what's happening now. And I really like the integrative approach concept that you think. Of course, for you don't have a work and a life. The life is part of the work. And that was always an odd statement too. And as an entrepreneur, for myself, that's there's both. They're all integrated in together, because what I'm working on is what is part of what I'm passionate about. And that's, how there's not a separation from that. And I think one of the things that is interesting with this time at home is people are looking at, how do I create that world for myself that is integrated. It's, I can take 10 minutes to go do yoga if I want to, because it's just right there. And that's, I think it's fine. People are finding that kind of time appealing.
Yeah. Well, and I think we're realizing that it's not, it's funny. I was talking to one of my clients last week, and he's like, I used to commute 3 hours a day, but it's not like I'm taking that 3 hours now and doing yoga and spending time with my family. I'm doing email. Okay. So no wonder I'm fried. So how do we help our employees? Managers have gotten the brunt of this in their roles, because they have been that, key leverage point for, their teams to go to around, answering questions about the business, to helping their employees deal with whatever they're dealing with personally, to talking through how to not be burnt out. So I just think it's important to, check in with your employees and make sure they are doing yoga and they have an integrated life, even though the scenery stays the same from day to day now.
And so that's really what you're saying, is that you're just taking everything you were doing in the office and just moving it into things at home, and it's not working. Right. No, that's definitely is definitely area for opportunities to get people into these more well-being and designed lives that's integrated.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, when I talked about pausing, obviously, we were laughing. I was talking to a leader the other day, and he's like, 2020 pausing, really? And it's been full of crises, crisis after crisis. And so I'm not talking about pausing, standing still. I'm talking about an opportunity to put some space in the everyday routines that we have. And so a lot of leaders are really taking a step back and looking at both their strategy, what they're doing, because they've had to our earlier conversation, they've had to pivot in some way. And then the culture. So do we have values and behaviors that are clear and that are operationalized in all of our practices and processes? And so if that is more intentional and people are more clear about how to work, I am going to feel a little more freed up in working at home. If I'm clear about how we make decisions and how and when I get communicated to about the strategy, and how I get rewarded for certain behaviors or not, then that frees me up to get my work done. I think so often, the things that cause fear and people to not feel so safe, especially when they're not in an office and they have all those other cues. It's when I'm not clear what gets rewarded, and I'm not sure if I'm going to get promoted because I think I'm doing everything right. I'm producing results, but I'm not sure if I'm, behaving in a way that's consistent with what you're even looking for me to do. So I think a lot of companies are realizing that culturally, being much more explicit about how we work together and talking through those seemingly kind of basic things really helps the entire company be more effective working together.
You were listening to an excerpt of my conversation with Melissa Daimler, advisor, facilitator, and executive coach at Daimler Partners. We talk more about designing how we work during this pandemic and into the future during the guest interview as part of the Be Your Own Best Coach program. So I want to let everyone know to check out BeYourOwnBestCoach.com, where you can find out more information about our 5-week group coaching program. Listeners of Be Your Own Best Coach Conversations can take 10% off enrollment costs using the keyword conversations. Thanks again for listening, and stay well.